Okay, let's talk about the agile environment, right? Um, Agile environment. The projects that we do in agile, they come in different ways, different shapes, different ways we undertake them, and then it's very important that the project team, has this awareness of the different characteristics or the different options available, because it will help them to choose the most successful way, the most likely successful way to achieve the project that they are trying to achieve. Um, so the practice guide refers to basically four types of life cycles, right? The first one is the predictive life cycle, and we know about more of the traditional life cycle where you have a lot of planning initially, and then um, you then start executing. When you execute, you then you know release. Basically, that's the predictive life cycle, meaning that you have a lot of information about the project, and then do a lot of planning initially. We have the iterative life cycle, which basically allows feedback from finished work to improve and modify that work. Um, so you release something, maybe a dashboard, and then customers can use it, and then they will give you feedback. Oh, this one is like this. Then you take that feedback and iterate on it and produce a better or a bigger, um, a better dashboard. Then we have the incremental life cycle, the approach that provides finished deliverables that the customer may be able to use immediately. So after you've refined everything, you've completed the project, you now release a feature, a key feature that customers can then use and it's good to go. And then we have the agile life cycle, which combines both the iterative and incremental to refine work items and deliver outcomes frequently. So the predictive basically requirements are fixed. The activities are performed once for the project, and then there's a single delivery, and then you manage costs basically because you have everything from the beginning. But then for iterative, the requirements could be dynamic. Um, the activities could be repeated until it is corrected or until everything is correct and good to go. You have a single delivery, and then you have correctness of the solution, which is the key goal of iteration. Then we have incremental, which is also dynamic in terms of requirements. And then the activities are performed once for a given increment. And then there are smaller few delivery. You have frequent smaller deliveries internally, which is more like iterations, and then the goal is speed. And then Agile has a combination of both of them, so that it can give you both correctness of solution and speed as we go. So as this diagram just shows you the continuum of life cycle, right? Basically showing you in terms of the degree of change and frequency of delivery. Agile is high on both um, iteration and incremental. Remember that the predictive system basically, um, the frequency of change, of course, is very low. So, and the frequency of delivery is just one major delivery, right? But Agile has the combination of both iteration and incrementals to ensure that you have products that come out on time and they're also very, very, useful and usable by the customers. So life cycle selection, how do you know which of them, you should select when you're trying to do an agile project? Take advantage. So for the predictive life cycles, you're looking at a system that takes advantage of things that are known and proven. So you're running a project that your uncertainties are not so much, right? So you can sequence and group them. You're probably looking at the predictive life cycle. Iterative life cycle allows feedback on partially completed or unfinished work. So if the kind of project you're doing has is proposed to have this kind of characteristics where you will need, as you keep going, to modify that work, iteration might be something you want to play around with. Incremental life cycle provides like finished deliverables, that the customer may be able to use immediately, right? That's key, right? And then agile life cycles leverages both duration and incremental characteristics. So you're trying to do that so that you can deliver products early, and then they are also usable at the end of the day. So characteristics of predictive life cycle. We have the first one for predictive. Of course, we've talked about this extensively. There's extensive planning, there's high certainty, because it's a project that you probably have an idea of what the end goal will look like. There's scope, time, costs set early for predictive life cycles. There's change managed carefully, formal control, and reporting. So basically, the predictive life cycle is basically you analyze and you design. When you finish analysis, you design, you build, you test, and you deliver. This is basically how the life cycle for predictive model works. Now, as a use of iterative life cycle, scope determined early, prototypes or proofs of concept. You determine the scope early, basically what we are doing now, right? You can then develop your prototypes to show, okay, this is what we're trying to do. There's time, cost, and design are planned progressively as you go. Iterations are developed through repeated cycles, and then each cycle adds to functionality. So basically, you analyze, then you analyze your design as well. So you look at design, check it again, make sure it's good. Then you start to build and test. So analyze and design means you analyze, you design, you analyze, you design. Then when you're satisfied, you then go to build and test. So you build what you have designed, you test. Is it good? If not, you build, you refine it, you build again, you test until when you're done, you then deliver. Basically, that's how the iterative life cycle works. Now, for the incremental life cycle, incremental talks about you having a series of iteration, and then at the end of each, a functionality is then added at the end of each iteration, and then after the final iteration, you're then done with your build. So basically, for incremental life cycle, for each this is an iteration. Basically, you analyze, you design, you build, test, you deliver. That's one iteration. You then do it again, you do it again until you're able to bring out all the features that the product would need um, in through the life cycle of the product. In terms of characteristics of these life cycles, so both iterative and incremental has multiple iterations and increased functionality. So requirements are set by iteration, and then they all welcome change. So um, basically, so you gather your requirements, you analyze, you design, you build, you test. You gather your requirements, you analyze, you build, you test. You keep doing that with time boxes until you get to your final to the life cycle of the product itself comes to an end. So a combination of predictive, incremental, iterative or adaptive, it's possible you can combine them. Um, you know, as we go, which is called basically hybrid. So let's talk about the hybrid method. Um, so we have a the hybrid method talks about basically combining two systems, right? One of the ways you can combine basically is you're combining agile, um, the predictive, the iterative, the incrementals. You can combine them, depending on the kind of project you are working on. So the first one is, let's say, agile development followed by a rollout. So basically, you're using this when there is uncertainty. You're not sure of some key things, in the course of a project. So you build using agile, and then you then release with predictive model, since you've already catered for all the uncertainties initially. So example of this approach is you're trying to develop a new high-tech product followed by rollout and training of thousands of users. The training part of the thousands of users, you already know how the training is going to look like, right? Maybe a timetable, a calendar, a system, maybe virtual, maybe physical, and all that. But then in terms of the development of the um, product, you then use agile, and then in terms of the training, you can then use a predictive model. So we have a combined agile and a predictive model, which is another approach as well. So you use the combination of the two of them throughout the life cycle of the project. So you're using them um, simultaneously. So it's not like you finish agile and then go to predictive. You're doing both agile and predictive. It's not usually used most of the time, but it's something that is available. Then we have a predominantly predictive with some agile in it. So an example will be you will be an engineering firm. You're trying to do a building facility with a new component. So you finish building, and then maybe a particular component building it itself is predictive, but then that particular component you can then use agile to run that particular part of the system, right? Then we have largely agile and predictive, basically just like the opposite of the previous one, where most of the work is done in agile, and then they then have predictive along the way. So an example would include integrating an external component, developed by a different vendor that cannot or will not partner in a collaborative manner. So you do the um, you do the general work in your agile system, and then you do the predictive one. Then we also have um, you the way you use it. Basically, you want to make sure that um, you are delivering value. That's the whole high point of the hybrid method. You can also mix approaches, right, in terms of hybrid. So, and key things, the agile frameworks are not customized for the team. The team needs to tailor the practice to deliver value. Remember, whatever you're doing, you're trying to do it so that you can deliver value, right? So often teams practice their own special kind of agile, even if they use a particular framework, you know, as a starting point. As an example of tailoring agile framework, one of the most common blends or in widespread use involves a coordinated use of the Scrum framework and Kanban method and the elements of extreme programming. So you see a system where they pick a couple of maybe from Scrum, from Kanban, from extreme programming, basically combining them so that you can be more efficient in your delivery. So mixing agile approaches or frameworks will also be useful. Example, the Scrum Band. Scrum Band basically talks about um, transitioning from Scrum to Kanban, right? Is a framework and methodology that has emerged, basically trying to more like balance the two of them, right? Using Scrum as framework and then Kanban for process improvement. You're building and then there's a board. So you use the Scrum principles for the framework and for the development, and then you use Kanban to see what everybody's doing so that everybody knows at every point in time and the process is improved. Now, Scrum provides guidance on the use of product backlog. The product owner, Scrum Master, and the cross-functional um, development team, including sprint planning, daily Scrum reviews, and all that. Then Kanban board helps the team to further improve its effectiveness by visualizing the flow of work, and then making impediments clearly visible so that other people can see it, and then it can be properly managed. Now, you can also add SP inspired engineering practices such as continuous integration, using paired programming, test-driven development, basically to further increase the effectiveness of the team or the agile team that is handling that project. So basically, tailoring options are important. You want to factor into it, check very well so that you know what you want to do and you can get them done properly. Now, there's also change management. In agile as well. So every project exists in an organizational context. So different cultures, structures, and policies of the organization can affect the outcome of the project. So while you may not have the ability to change organizational dynamics, as you deem fit as a project manager, um, you are expected to navigate those dynamics skillfully, right? It's important that you understand it and pass through it skillfully, right? Even as you run through the agile environment. So when we talk about organizational change management, covers the skill and techniques for influencing change that supports agility. That's basically what we're doing. We're trying to change in an agile way and all that. So the key drivers for change. All projects are about change. That's like when we define project, basically we're saying that we're moving from where we are to where we want to be. So there are two key factors that will further motivate the use of change management practice in an agile context. So changes associated with accelerated delivery, changes associated with agile approaches. These are key things that we can work around with in terms of changes. Then when we talk about readiness for change, we're looking at the executive management people. Are they willing to change? At the organization, generally organizations willing to change, shifting the way it views things, it reviews, assessing employees, centralization or decentralization of project programs and portfolio management functions. These are very, very important. Now, they will talk about talent management and maturity and and all the different capabilities around that, other terms of readiness for change. Just like the initial, when we talk about traditional method, Agile also has their own project management office, you know, or the Agile relationship with the project management office. Basically, the PMO office, like we initially said, basically houses, manages project management within an organization, right? Um, but high point of it is that it's always value driven. So any project must deliver the right value, right, to the right audience at the right time, and the basic function of the PMO is to um, facilitate and enable that this goal is achieved, right? An agile based project manager or an PMO approach is based on a customer collaboration mindset and that is present in the programs. Um, an agile PMO is invitation oriented. So, in order to accelerate progress on a value based charter, a PMO may be tempted to mandate certain solutions or approaches. For example, to make everyone do it the same way to get someone quick wins. However, a more deliberate perspective incorporates the desire for employee, management. So another function is an agile PMO is multidisciplinary. So you have different people, system that comes together to develop and implement standards, recruit, select, evaluate team leaders, execute specialized tasks for projects, facilitate organizational learning, multi-project management, developing the personnel through training and mentoring. These are key things when it comes to agile. Now, common agile practices, um, retrospectives, like we initially mentioned, talking about the team at the end of building something, they come together to ask themselves, what have we done better? What do we need to do better as we move ahead? Then we have backlog preparation, basically getting all the needs that customers would want for the product. That's a very important common agile practice. Then we have backlog refinement, where we try to clean up which one comes first, which one comes next, prioritization, and all that. Then we have daily stand-ups, basically business that we do every day to check the progress of the development. Then demonstrations and reviews, basically showing our customers or clients or stakeholders what we have built for each of the sprints or each of the um, periods, and then planning for iteration-based agile, basically talking about planning the process on everything we're going to be doing. So basically, these are common, practices for agile. Then we have execution practices that helps the team to deliver. One of them is continuous integration. So continuous integration talks about um, bringing out things in a continuous manner, joining continuous integration. Everybody, different developers, front end, back end, and all. We bring everything together so that we can have something that we can use at every point in time. Test at all levels. Test at all levels. You're testing both while you're even writing requirements, there's test, even when you're coding, you're checking, and all that. Acceptance test driven development, meaning that you're writing. Acceptance test basically talks about what I want to see at the end of the day to show that um, this thing is successful, right? As a user, I want to be able to log into my mobile app so that I can access my page. So that's it, an acceptance criteria. So whenever I'm developing such that that acceptance criteria is worked on. And then in some cases, we have a development where the test cases are even written even before development starts. That's test driven development. And then we also have behavioral driven development where we're trying to see how this system is going to behave before we even start development. And then spikes, basically time box research or experiment, because of our project and program. So basically, these are basic common agile practices that we use daily in our movement and in everything that we do as it relates to Scrum. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions?